It's now certain that chemical agent sarin has been used in Syria, according to the French Foreign Minister. That confirmation came after the release of a devastating UN report into human rights abuses on both sides in the Syrian civil war. The chairman of the UN Commission on Syria called on all outside powers not to send weapons to the country.
Syria needs not a military surge. Syria needs a diplomatic surge. We cannot continue to stand idly by and watch this catastrophe unfold. We ask states that exert influence over the parties to the conflict to compel them to protect civilians.
Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Jonathan Rugman is here. Jonathan, how important is this double intervention from the UN and the French?
Well, first of all, on the French side, the French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius is saying tonight that he is certain that chemical weapons, the nerve agent sarin, has been used several times in Syria in a localized manner, as he calls it. And he says that the perpetrators of these attacks must not go unpunished, and he's referring his evidence to the UN. But intriguingly, he's not saying which side in this civil war has carried out these attacks, either because he doesn't know or because he doesn't want to say. At the same time, we've had the most authoritative report yet from the UN inquiry on human rights abuses in Syria, and it's a really horrific read. And this UN inquiry says it also believes that limited amounts of chemical weapons have been used 4 times on occasions in March and in April. And we've got disturbing pictures we can show now of one of these presumed attacks. This was near Aleppo in the north of the country. But yet again, the UN report doesn't say which chemicals were used in the UN's case or how they were deployed, and crucially, who used them. So even if Barack Obama's so-called red line has been crossed, nobody is forcing Obama across that red line, because nobody is nailing their colours to the mast and saying, well, you know, the Syrian government has been using it unequivocally. All the indications are that both sides have been involved to some extent. Although the Foreign Office in London tonight is saying there's no question that the burden of human rights abuses lies on the government side.
So more and more evidence emerging, but where does it leave us in terms of arming the rebels?
Well, I think what's really interesting is what the chair of this UN inquiry was saying in the clip we just played, which is basically a message to the British and the French on one side and the Russians on the other. Do not send weapons into Syria, is what a very senior UN official is now saying. So he's now flying in the face of some of the UN's most important members. The chairman is saying it is an illusion that more weapons will tip the balance between the two parties. His report says increased arms transfers hurt the prospect of a political settlement and have devastating consequences for civilians. So you really do now have this important UN body at odds with everybody who wants to or is thinking about arming sides in this conflict. At the same time, you're supposed to have a peace conference, which the Americans are trying to organise with the Russians in Geneva on the 15th of June. That was the slotted date. What I'm hearing tonight is that date is slipping, and if this conference happens at all, it will be towards the end of June, because it is far from clear that the opposition, the Syrian opposition, is prepared to turn up and sit down and talk to the Syrian government. So we have a situation with 80,000 dead, possibly more, and absolutely no sign of any diplomatic breakthrough.
Thanks, Jonathan.